Hello, my name is the Jordan Coach of the Virginia Vault, and it's been a while, but VGC 2024 is here. Both DLCs have dropped, and that means hundreds of returning mons, returning moves, new mons, new moves, lots of changes with ramifications to VGC Draft League, the game I love. I don't play Pokemon, that's a game made for kids. I play a strategically deep, expressive game made out of Pokemon, largely by people on the internet. We make spreadsheets, we make PowerPoints, big PowerPoint incoming, and are continuously debating what makes good, winning Draft League teams in an ever-evolving game. So behind the scenes, I have made a tier list of all of the 700 plus Pokemon in this format. A lot of effort, a lot of debating, but not only have I made all my valuations available, the link is in the description, but I've compared my valuation to other people, other smart people who know a lot about the game, other large VGC draft leagues. So this should be a very helpful resource to you as you're attempting to win your next league or attempting to start or lead a league. This will be kind of two focuses here, the people who make these draft leagues happen and also the people who want to break the draft league to make the strongest possible team. So that leads me to another point here as I talk about what's changing, what's getting better in VGC 2024. How we structure our draft league makes a big difference as to what's good, and in some cases how fun it will be. We'll get to that as we go forward here. Okay, we're in it. A lot of my Draftables analysis videos from last year do still hold up. A lot of the conclusions are still relevant to 2024, but last year was seeing regular change as new mons were added. Finally, the format is staying put. All the mons are here. We're going to be playing in 2024 and 2025 after this. Basically this format and formats based upon this format. So I want to get my most up-to-date knowledge and conclusions out there. This is the largest format short of NatDex we've ever had, 750 Pokemon. And not only that, some of the mid and low tiers have caught up because Game Freak has paid a little bit more attention to competitive Pokemon. If you're struggling, you got new access to Close Combat or Ice Spinner or High Horsepower. And so some of the mons are starting to bridge the gap. Research and analysis is crucial. If you dig deep and look into mons, you're going to find mons that nobody else is paying attention to that are pretty good for what you need. And in addition, you got to regularly look at this team builder because if you're not getting new gifts, new moves, ability to use the new mechanics well, you are falling behind. A mon that used to be good a few years ago is maybe okay now, but you got to re-examine your previously held beliefs to get the best stuff if you want to play at the top of this game, especially considering Gen 9 power creep. A lot of the best mons are Gen 9 or Gen 8 before it, so you don't need to know all of the mons, especially if you're new to the game, but you do need to draft mons that are resilient to a wide variety of stuff that can be thrown at them. So we're going to be talking about power creep towards the end of the video and how to kind of structure your draft league to maybe address this a little bit better, but let's start with the format as it is. Real quick credentials in case you're new to the channel. I am obsessed with VGC Draft League and some other strategy games. I'm not the greatest, that's Tay in case you were wondering, but the effort is here, so maybe check out the other videos. Moving straight on from that, this is going to be a looser Draftables. There's so much to say, and I'm not going to get to all of it. Some of it's going to be relevant to you, some of it's not, but so maybe write down or go back to the stuff that is. What's bigger? Post-DLC coverage. I've got a list here of some of the more notable new move inclusions. Like, you're gonna have to fight Psy Spam. It's more like there's 50 new mons with expanding force, so bringing a dark type is pretty good. But seeing big inconsistent ice damage is now something you have to contend with. Ground mons are largely got 25% stronger because they're using high horsepower instead of stomping tantrum. So you can maybe pause this and look at this, but if I were to group them into buckets, coverage. Coverage is big, and coverage has never been less essential. As a result, I assume mons are going to have 6 different types of attacks to hit people with, and if they don't, they can use Terastallization and Terra Blast, so not as important as it used to be. A fair amount of new moves are cutting stats, like Breaking Swift cuts attack, E-Webs cuts speed, knocking off items, more common. You want mons resilient to changing conditions who are willing to swap in and out of these stat drops, and setup. A few new moves are setting up your attack, setting up your speed, setting up the conditions of the field. It is a tough time for setup when Chen Pao is threatening to claw your eyes out, but it is still something to pay attention to. Weather Wars. Weather Wars is super relevant now because we have all 8 automatic weather setters, all these chlorophyll mons that abuse the sun, all of these swift swim mons that abuse the rain. I don't recommend building a whole team that takes advantage of rain. That's not versatile enough for my taste, but you're gonna fight a rain team, a sun team, a team that use this casually or in a more dedicated fashion, and having one counter weather mon mon that resets the weather, or one mon that takes advantage of the opponent's weather, that can be really valuable. So like a late, cheap Swift Swim mon, I think is pretty good here. This is a volatile time for speed. Not only more Tailwind came at the start of the generation, but more and more Paradox Mons who have the ability to at will use an item to 50% increase their speed. So speed tiers are all over the place. We got lots of priority coming back. You need Mons that are fast or priority users. This is going to come back a little bit later. But knowing that this game is volatile, that's bigger and bigger in the DLC. So I think a nice vehicle to understand how the game has changed and appreciate that some archetypes of Pokemon are going to keep up a lot better than others heading into 2024 is to look at some of the first Mons that I analyzed in the original Draftables Gen 8. Look how better my PowerPointing is getting. I updated it. Likes and comments for better PowerPointing. But I argued back in Gen 8, I think correctly at the time, that lots of Mons Swampert beats and not a lot of Mons beat Swampert. And the bulky water has been a dependable archetype for most of competitive Pokemon history. But Swampert's not getting any new gifts, and the pace of the game is changing. So this used to be really, really great coverage, right? Water, ground, rock, everybody's got great coverage, or nearly everybody. And if they don't, they can use terrestrialization. Water is a great type, especially water ground, but anybody can terrestrialize water. Swampert used to have few weaknesses, just grass moves, but anybody can Terra Blast grass. And it's nice to not have to terrestrialize, but Swampert is not going to benefit much from using it, and it's going to be on the unfortunate end of surprises more so than it's on the good end of the surprises, right? So Swampert is dependable, it's pretty good, it's pretty bulky, it's not that strong, so that's the issue, is when a lot of Mons used to fall just short of two-shotting Swampert, there are new dials to make yourself more aggressive. We got Chen Pao, we got offensive terrestrialization, so the range of Mons that can just out-aggressive Swampert is just so much higher than it used to be. It used to be okay that Swampert could get outsped. 60 is a bad speed tier, but not when all of these Mons are threatening two shots on Swampert, and very few Mons Swampert can one-shot in return to make up that lack of tempo. Even Mons that are weak to Swampert are just barely surviving a lot of these high horsepowers and liquidations. These are not high base power moves. If I want to use coverage, I want the close combats, I want the Mega Horns, I want Triple Axle, I want Flare Blitz. This is not quite enough here if I'm going to not use my stab move. So the bulk is still pretty good, but at the pace things are going, it's still just getting two-shot. So, and this offense is definitely not it. You want Mons that are more min-max these days. So let's look. Yeah, Chen Pao, not a fair comparison, right? This is one of the best Mons in the game, but it doesn't need any kind of boost to... spoilers. It doesn't need any kind of boost to shoot two-shot Swampert. With the new dials, offensive terrestrialization and extreme speed becoming even crazier. So Entei is just two-shotting Swampert regardless of whether Trick Room's up or Tailwind or anything. Swampert can't do anything about this. Swampert already can't one-shot Entei, right? It's just not quite strong enough. So Entei is blowing it away, any E-speed spammer. And then offensive terrestrialization makes pretty strong, not overly strong Mons like Gardevoir able to two-shot Swampert. So the neutral situation where Swampert isn't necessarily beating a Mon, but it's not losing, those neutral situations are now, it used to be a little bit Swampert's favor, and now a lot of the times it's a little bit against Swampert. One specific problem that Swampert is really facing here is Trailblaze. Everybody has this weak new grass move that it boosts your speed, so it's kind of useful on a setup Mon, but everybody can two-shot Swampert. Like, you do not need to be strong at all, and then any Terra Grass Trailblaze is boosted and is one-shotting Swampert. So this is why I say Swampert's going to be on the bad end of surprises most of the time. Luxray is not that powerful, and even the strongest non-Terra Trailblazes are beating up Swampert here. Do not draft Rage Powder with your Swampert team, because you're just attracting more Terra Blast Grass, more Terra Grass, and that really Swampert struggles here. Swampert used to be a mixed attacker. That used to have a little bit more value when you couldn't make your Mon whatever you wanted to be with terrestrialization. But 85 special attack just doesn't cut it anymore. You'd rather take your super strong special attacker and Terra Water, and then you're getting all the benefits from Swampert anyway. Swampert used to use its special toolkit for Sludge Wave. It lost Sludge Wave and got Poison Jab, so we don't really care. We're a physical attacker now. It's nice to not always be weak to Intimidate, but it's just not good enough anymore. Swampert lost Scald, so it's like, why? We're just a physical attacker now and not a super impressive one. On a scale of 1 to 20 back in Gen 8. I had this Swampert at a 13, thought it could even be a 14, but now our scale goes up to 27 with these crazy mons, and Swampert's down at 11 in my assessment. So you can still bring Swampert. It still does stuff. It just doesn't quite do enough to pull its weight a lot of the time. Don't bring it to the majority of your matches. Just have a backbone piece to fill out the roster. So I think when Wide Guard's good, when Yawn's good, when in particular these stabs are really good, you can still bring Swampert, but this is not going to cut it anymore. If you're going to be bulky, you can also be strong or fast or both now. This is a real new legendary, so not a super fair comparison, but I've got a cheaper option if you don't have as many points right after this. Walking Wake is an incredible new threat, so I want to showcase it. Water Dragon, incredible typing. Also, we are a sun abuser. We are an every weather abuser. So Hydro Steam, you want mons with unique signature moves, like they're all getting these days. Hydro Steam is a water move, which instead of being weakened in sun, is extra 50% stronger in sun. So you're adding new dimensions to your sun mode. If you're drafting Torkoal, I think Walking Wake should be the one. It's the very best bringing variety to the sun mode. People used to counter sun with rocks and ground types because they don't need to fear water moves as much. But now this Hydro Steam is destroying the rock and ground counters. People used to bring dragons to beat your sun modes, which consists of fire attacks and chlorophyll grass mons. But we have the fastest dragon, or one of the fastest dragons out there, beating the dragon counters with a fast Draco Meteor. These stabs just by themselves are incredible. This guy's Scald. Scald is a rare gift, but it gets that too. We're getting gifted coverage. Flamethrower boosted in sun. We got Hurricanes always hitting in rain. We got Weather Ball for unique tools in all the weathers. We got utility out the wazoo. Let's jump to like some sample sets here, right? So we're good in every situation with boosted in sun, water moves, Life Orb to boost power. In sun, we get 50% speed boost. We're 260 speed, and we're strong, and we can nuke anything with Draco Meteor, and we have sun boosted flamethrowers. We're beating our fairy counters, right? Because we turn into a fire type and resist them. Really, really great. In basically all situations, you can't even anti-weather this guy because Hydro Steam is still going to get boosted in rain too. Scald is awesome because it has no counters and everybody doesn't like taking a burn. But Snarl, right? These are not moves you're going to see on the ladder because they're not like a top 4 Walking Wake move. But against a special attacking core, Flutter Mane Chi-Yu, you're going to want that Snarl. So good option to have, especially when you're so damn fast. So Assault Vest, be bulky. This mon is as bulky as Swampert. Swampert's not 190 defense. So we carry Assault Vest. We have time to cut attacks, knock off items, knock out the Trick Room setter. These stabs are so good, you just need 1 or 2 of them, especially with like a random Terra Steel. This mon is reliably pulling its weight and then some. Boosted in rain, why not? A Rain Sweeper at the same time. Sniper, because the new move, Dragon Cheer, is here. Boosts the critical hit rate of your mons, especially dragon types. So 50-50 crits on all your moves after Dragon Cheer, and with Scope Lens, it's 100% of the time. You don't necessarily need the Scope Lens. I'm down with taking some 50-50s, but Draco Meteor is a nuke on everything, and the downside being your future attacks are weakened. No, not anymore. When you're critting straight through that attack drop, and you're getting the 50% boost on crit, so you can spam Draco Meteors. This is a mon bulky enough to set itself up, or have a Sceptile. Sceptile has Dragon Cheer. Set up your Walking Wake with the partner and go to town. When you're strong and fast, it is worth setting up these mons because they become win conditions. Finally, just spam, right? Terra Blast, Fairy, why not? When you have your stabs for other situations, Flamethrower, like this is such amazing coverage. Nothing walls this. So really, really great. But if you don't have all the money required to get Walking Wake, or if Walking Wake is taken by the Torkoal team, let's say you only have Swampert prices, I think the better mon these days is to go for Vaporeon. Vaporeon is bulkier than Swampert. That's an amazing HP stat, but it's not going to be as surprised by those Terra Blast grasses or grass coverage. It's only 2x weak and bulkier, so definitely not going down in one hit like Swampert would be. Just as strong as Swampert, but now why I'm recommending Vaporeon is it's getting the new gifts in Gen 9. It got Calm Mind at the beginning of the generation. That's an excellent boosting move. It keeps Skull Scald, which is really, really useful. It got Alluring Voice in the new DLC. Fairy Coverage is great for a mon where one of its limitations used to be coverage. If you got Water, you got Ice, you got Ghost, and you got Fairy, you got everything you need. Calm Mind, this is a mon that can work at some faster tempos, right? You just throw out one Life Orb boosted Scald, or you do one Calm Mind and then start going for the one-shots. This mon can keep up at a pretty fast pace, but it can also play really slow, right? End gaming, right? Leftovers Protect and Yawn, like, oh, that's all you need. Scald Burns. So we have ways to get some passive recovery, slow down the opponent, and boost ourselves up. So we're turning all the dials in our favor. You don't need to go with the all-out stall where you're getting a ton of boosts and then clicking stored power, which benefits off your boost, and then you win everything. Like something in between that always fits the matchup. You can just go this with an Ice Beam, right? So Leftovers or Citrus Berry. So it's a mon that works at various different tempos, at the speed the game is being played, and also at end games where they might not have enough to beat something as reliable as Vaporeon. And then at the end, you can always just spam, right? Water is a good spammable type, especially when you have Ice coverage and Ghost coverage. So you got to know that at the pace things are going, you don't always have the time to set up. It's good to have a Prankster screen setter. It's good to have a Tailwind setter. It's good to have an Intimidate, but a lot of these mons have to just be devoted to their best thing about them, boost it up, and go. Scalds and Muddy Waters can take you very far. So I have Vaporeon at 1 point higher than Swampert these days. I think I have it at 12, and I think a lot of people are sleeping on this. Let's see where Vaporeon is on the other tier list. 7, 8 on WPF and WBG. It's better than that, so this is a good mid to late draft Watermon that's going to be more dependable than Swampert will be. Another archetype you're going to want to update for 2024 is the Fast Support Mon. Persian Alola used to be excellent at this in Gen 8, the star of my second Draftables, but is not quite as good at it. It's doing basically the same things it was last year, and now it's back, but we'll go over it because it's still pretty good, but we just got to know what we're trying to improve on. It's fast, it's bulky with Fur Coat, and it cuts your opponent's stats. It disrupts them with Fake Out, cuts their offense with Snarl, speed with Icy Wind, stats with Parting Shot, annoys them, switches items, cuts their defense. You're cutting their stats a lot of the time, and you also do a bit of damage. But the problem being these new items that are come to victimize Persian. It's almost like Game Freak listened to me when I said blanketing your opponent with stat drops is just so oppressive and so free that they added the two best new items of Gen 9, Counter Persian, immunity to all stat drops. That's all Persian's doing for the most part. Covert Cloak, blocks secondary effects. That's a lot of what Persian's doing, especially the Fake Out. So Persian is usually good against 4 of the 6 mons your opponent is bringing, because these items are the best items. You frequently want to have them. Still good against some of the mons that don't have them, but there's also Defiant and Competitive, which used to be the only thing Persian used to fear. And so next we want to talk about speed, why this isn't quite as effective. Still very fast, but some of the best mons are Flutter Mane and Chimpow, faster than Persian and can beat up on it. And this 94th percentile among fully evolved Pokemon does not include 10 Paradox mons who can use Speed Booster to jump over it. So not quite what it used to be. If you want a really bulky support mon that reliably does things, Cresselia, Uxie, these mons hold up better because they're bulky on both sides, not just the defensive side. But if you want to go fast, which is the best supports are the ones who make their impact before the opponents have even got to do anything, there is no substitute for Prankster. I'm not going to argue Meowstic's the best Prankster. We know it's Grimmsnarl, Whimsicott, Tornadus, but it is a good Prankster. And in a world where you have Speed Booster and you have tons of Tailwind and you have Swift Swim, Persian can't outspeed any of that, but Meowstic can with the speed of priority. So if you use some of Meowstic's unique gifts, it will be a very reliable player in ways in which natural speed is just not going to be able to keep up, and stat dropping is certainly not going to be able to keep up. So unique gifts, the only Prankster with Skill Up besides Sableye, the only Prankster with Gravity besides Sableye. Unfortunately, it's not as good as Sableye, but the only Prankster with Fake Out and Trick Room. So you want to kind of ignore the passive support mon, but then it sets Trick Room, and that totally changes up the game. Use its unique gifts. Prankster Terrain, what's going on here? But Prankster Fake Tears and Charm. So we have enough. We wish we had had Tailwind. We wish we would have Dark Typing to ignore other Pranksters. Meowstic's biggest problem is other Pranksters, but I'm going to show the movesets off to show why you can kind of ignore other Pranksters. Right, so Meowstic's best bet is to ignore other pranksters, reliably do its thing. Set up the screens, fake them out, set up the trick room. We block their taunt with Mental Herb or with Terra Dark. We can choose to block Sleep with Terra Grass. We can choose to block Fake Out with Covert Cloak. There's almost no way to stop Meowstic from doing one or two important things. And what is that? It's whatever the matchup calls for. Any move is good when it's moving at priority speed. So this is our speed control option of choice, if not Trick Room. And then Fake Tears. If Fake Tears is what you need for your special attacking partner, Meowstic can also benefit from that. Psychics are pretty good after Fake Tears. We got Fairy coverage now, so use the unique tools of Meowstic to reliably do its thing. This can make a big difference on Draft League teams. Let's go back. I've got this guy at 15, which is akin to the other good pranksters in the second tier, Klefki and Murkrow and Illumise, whereas I have Persian down at 12 because it's just like a couple of problems that it has that Meowstic just doesn't have to worry about. Meowstic is as bulky as the other pranksters. They're all kind of in the same league. Klefki gets the nod only because of steel typing, but this is a reliable mon that you can bring all the time, where you just can't do that with natural speed the way you can with prankster these days. Our last archetype to update for 2024 is something I think is even more important, more essential in 2024, and that is not the Coverage King. Sorry, Drampa, you can hit with every color of the rainbow, but so can plenty of mons these days. It is the nuke. The nuke I define as being really strong in particular dimensions, giving up some of your variety as a Pokemon in order to be laser focused, hitting as hard as you can in your dimension. Xurkitree with my poster child last gen as an electric type nuke. It's not here. We gotta look elsewhere for Gen 9, and so you can look at these fancy Gen 9 mons that are getting a lot of attention, but in the DLC came a Gen 7 mon that I think might fly under the radar, but is tailor-made to abuse terrestrialization. That is Araquanid. We look at these numbers, and the defenses are good. Like, this is above average for fully evolved Pokemon. I get these numbers from the Poppin calculator. Link in the description. Poppin Fresh made a resource that reconciles between the different defensive stats, reconciles how typing affects your bulk. It's just one of those, he's one of those guys, elite content creators and elite resources for high-level VGC. But that's where I get my numbers here. Great Spadef, so great at taking special hits. We look at these offensive numbers and we're like, that's not good. But then we realize signature ability, it's like a Gen 9 all over again. Signature Water Bubble ability doubles the power of water moves. That's on top of Stab, so like it's almost like the starting number barely matters at that point if you're doubling it on top of Stab. Liquidation or Hydro Pump, even the 50 becomes crazy when we stack the multipliers. We're using water moves almost all the time. Our opponent knows Araquanid is using water moves, and knowing is not sometimes enough to stop it. So the calcs will explain the case here. Swampert's best thing going for it, as we talked about it, is its general bulk, but Araquanid is just cleanly two-shotting it with a water move here. Doesn't even need boosts, and when you do stack on the boost, Mystic Water, Terra Water, we're cleanly one-shotting, or almost always one-shotting a Swampert. Swampert's not weak to water, it just gets mowed down, and we could have gone even harder. We could have gone Choice Specs, we could have gone Life Orb, and so like the 50 goes straight to one shot. It's pretty amazing. So you have that mix-up of being special attacking or attacking. That's what makes Swampert not good, is that it doesn't have Water Bubble, right? So mid stats can be overcome with a great ability. So water is such a spammable attacking type. That's why we've talked about water types a lot. A lot of them are really good, but a lot of teams have only one or two water resists, and that's usually your answer to water types, your own water type, a grass type, a dragon type, but when you're so strong, you can break through resists, and then you're terra-proof at that point. Latias is a bulky Pokemon that resists water, and I gave it bulk investment, and Araquanid is cleanly two-shotting it anyway. Super amazing, and let's really look at its bulk too. Like, this is a boosted Stab Draco Meteor. Araquanid takes it, and it's going to take the second one most of the time too, given the stat drop. So Araquanid's going toe-to-toe, and that's the kind of bulk that allows you to overcome a lack of speed. It's the kind of power that allows you to overcome a lack of speed. So this is what we want. The only threats to Araquanid are these two abilities, right? Because if we're resistance proof for the most part, Storm Drain. You might fight one Storm Drain all season. It's Gastrodon. Maybe a second one, maybe. But Water Absorb, there's maybe 10 relevant mons. I wouldn't even say 10, because one's Araquanid. You don't have to deal with Araquanid when you've got it. Cacturn, we're beating up with our bug move, and it's just generally not worth bringing. And then Politoed. If you're convincing Politoed not to bring its main thing, Drizzle, because it would boost Araquanid, and you're bringing Water Absorb just to absorb Araquanid, I think you've already won there. So you got to watch out for Ogerpon Wellspring, but like, Araquanid is basically ignoring some elements of the game, namely typing, and only has to worry about a half dozen mons. So I think that's nice. It makes it easy to build. It's just whether you're going physical or special, or whether you have your main mix-up here, is the stall set, right? We got good defenses. Water Bug is good because it's got resistances to close combat, high horsepower, Icicle Crash, or just going full water, or going steel. Water Bubble also makes you resistant to fire, so it makes Terra Steel even more amazing. So people want to protect in front of the obvious water move being shot in their face, and then you stockpile on them, and then you infestation, and then you start leeching health from them, cutting their health, healing on your own. This is an effective endgame mod, especially given that amazing special defense. So given that mix-up, you don't need a lot of mix-ups when you're a nuke. Just having one goes a long way. And fortunately, Araquanid lost Toxic from Gen 8, so bring your Glimmauras to Toxic your opponents, and then just sit there with Araquanid. This is a playmaker. This is a mon that really adds a new dimension to your team, that any time you catch them sleeping without Terra Waters, like you just run them over. It's great in Trick Room, but doesn't even care if it's going second a lot of the time. So that's why I have this guy valued at 16. And then it gets to a big point alert, about how mons adapt to different power levels. Some mons do their thing just as well, whether you're fighting the top 100 mons a lot or you're fighting as many as 400 different Pokemon. Pranksters keep prankstering. They keep going first, whether they're fighting Flutter Mane or less dominant Pokemon. And Araquanid, I think, holds its value just as well in higher power level formats. You might not bring it quite as often when you can bring Iron Hands, Ogerpon, Volcarona, Metagross, but you also see less counterplay as a result. Fewer people are paying attention to the 4th or 5th strongest mon, and so you see less Terra Water to try to fight Araquanid. And so it drills its spot into teams, it has its niche, it earns its place on the team. Whereas I think Swampert loses any place it has on teams as the power level gets sufficiently high. If you've got 5 mons that are as bulky as Swampert, but also stronger, or faster, or both, or have unique tools, why would you bring Swampert when you can Terra Water your King Gambit or Arcanine? There's just very few circumstances where that makes any sense to me. So that's the difference between a slightly reduced power level format like the VBLS is running, 110 points versus 120 at the WBG. More so than that, it's pricing. Pricing makes a big difference here. A lot of leagues have done, since generations past, 20 is the maximum price you can have for a Pokemon. And that made sense to a degree, but the best Pokemons in history have come in Gen 9, and not only that, they abused terastallization so that they essentially can always come every week. You used to have a week where you had to leave Garchomp at home into the Hail Team, but now you just Terrafire and win anyway. So Chien-Pao and Chi-Yu make your entire team overwhelmingly powerful. Flutter Mane makes you unscarfable and just dominates. Urshifu makes it so you can't protect. These mons are more than twice as good as most other mons in terms of the total value they bring to the team, but if you haven't compensated, like Inteleon and Dusknoir and other pretty good Pokemon, if they used to cost 10 or 11, and they still cost 10 or 11, where these new amazing top mons are still 20, then it's the obvious dominant strategy. Every time, go for the top tiers until you run out of money. And that's a little bit of a shame. It makes the draft more predictable, and it makes synergy less of a thing, because why would you take anything but King Gambit? If you don't go for it, then it'll be out, and there will be no top tiers left because everybody can afford the top tiers. That's a rather extreme case. You might not fully agree with me that Chien-Pao is worth 27, but WPS having it with 20, that's a very big gap. Like, I think it's very undervalued, and so even if you meeting me halfway, this thing's a no-brainer to grab with the first pick. And then if you haven't adjusted, like Rhyperior and Breloom, like they're 12 according to me and 12 according to WBG and WPF. So it's like, why not spend the extra 5 points to get Walking Wake, like, or spend 7 more points to get Tornadus, right? They're just that much better. And so that's, I think, the difference here. Some people might prefer a league where the top 100 mons are mostly the mons you're going to be seeing. It's more comfortable. It's more similar to the ladder. And you might prefer to use more of the Gen 9 mons, which fit right at home in this high power level league. This clearly serves a purpose. People are having fun. But if you want to play in a league where you can make something happen with Sinistra and Vikavolt as your first 2 picks, that's awesome. Like, Poppin is in the finals here. Dan has made a few points go a long way with like mediocre Rain Abuser, and Zoroark kind of outclassed, really frail, but adds to his mouse ape mix-ups. He can even make Doxbun and Camerupt work every once in a while. There's only so much you can bring them in a league where Chien-Pao still exists, but like Vikavolt is number 2 here, but it's the second to last pick on this team. It's probably an afterthought next to Urshifu, Roaring Moon, Clefable. So you can see 300 or 400 mons shine, and I think that's a great thing. This is for the people who are running the leagues as to whether you might make your top tiers fully reflective of the value and to not have these blatantly underpriced low tiers, so that people can experiment with more stuff, that can try out low tiers earlier and not just rush the top tiers. But if you're playing, then this is your strategy here, is to go for them. Or join the VBLS. Our Discord link is in the description. But this gets to my final section here. It's about structure. It's about how the rules of the Draft League affect your experience of playing in it. 2 elements of typical Draft League formats are threatening the activity's future, in my opinion, as a strategically deep, expressive, and creative game, and are causing me to enjoy it less, which I think is a shame as one of the most passionate Draft League players. The first is power creep, which we've been talking about, but I think we have abundant potential solutions to this. Fewer mons can share the field opposite Chi-Yu and some of the most crazy strong new mons, but we're making them more expensive. We are coming up with low tier leagues that remove them from the format. There will be different solutions for people who want them, but if you've been in the VBLS, you've heard me talk about the other, Encore. I don't enjoy talking about it, so I thought I'd definitively lay out the case here so we can talk about it less. Encore is a blatantly unhealthy move that reduces the effective options in Draft League, which I think is one of its great attributes. Let's try to do this in 5 minutes. Encore forces its opponent to re-click its last move indefinitely for 3 moves, but you can encore them after you've encored them, so indefinitely. So the first turn, you don't do what you wanted to do because you got encored. The second turn, you can switch out to remove encore, but that's just another free turn for your opponent to pummel you with a wave crash or something. In a high-tempo game like Gen 9 VGC, a few turns frequently makes the difference. So getting encored is frequently a losing proposition. So let's not do things that gets punished by encore, right? Here's my problem here is I've struggled to find any moves that can't be punished by encore. Boosting moves. I want to boost my offense or defense or speed or health. Why would I bother clicking Swords Dance if I could be stuck clicking Swords Dance, Swords Dance, Swords Dance until I die? All of the tech, the spicy stuff that has specific circumstances where you want to click it, gravity to increase the accuracy of your moves, swapping around speeds or abilities or power, or boosting your partner, or copying their moves, or imprisoning, all the funky moves. I think this is a lot of what makes the game not just a I hit you, you hit me until one of us is dead, is you want to change the conditions of the game to eventually overwhelm your opponent. All of these things become a very risky proposition when you could be stuck clicking gravity, 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 or switching out and losing another turn. Gravity doesn't do anything on your second click. Same with imprison. Same with screens. Light screen, light screen, light screen. Does not do anything. And so this is one of the key elements to mitigating damage, is now very risky. Even the former best move in the game, Fake Out, is now a risky proposition when you could be locked into it. It does literally nothing when re-clicked. So yeah, Rain Dance, Misty Terrain. I'm not even done here. Why bother clicking Will-O-Wisp when you could be locked into it? Why bother clicking Fake Tears? Why bother clicking Speed Control against specifically Prankster Encore because you could be locked into that? Why bother clicking Icy Wind? You want that speed drop, but it doesn't do enough damage if you're forced to click it over and over. So why bother clicking my coverage attack? Well, it's not as strong as my stab attack, so it wouldn't do as much damage. Why bother clicking my stab move? My strongest move. Everything just leads to just click your stab move is the one thing that can't be punished by Encore. Well, half of the attacking types in this game, something is immune to it. So you could be surprised by a Terra or a Mon in the back and potentially be doing nothing. It adds a lot of risk risk to everything, and in particular, a lot of, I think, the more creative moves in the game. We might have different opinions about that, but this is a very long list, and I don't think there's a lot of things that aren't on the list. So the solution, the answer to Encore is to, Mental Alert protects one Mon for one time. Aroma Veil, unfortunately, is all bad Pokemon. That would block Encore, but it's not worth it to bring an Oinkologne. Psychic Terrain, just Prankster Encore. These are kind of very limited answers to Encore. I don't know of any actual answers to Encore besides preemptively playing in a linear faction. Always clicking your strongest move, crossing your fingers, and hoping for the best. And I think that is a less fun game than the one I fell in love with. We used to try shit, and I understand Dynamax made it so Encore didn't work, and that gave us a reprieve from realizing how bad Encore was, and then we weren't as skilled, so we didn't realize how broken Encore is and how unhealthy it is. But we're seeing it more and more every season, and if you haven't, just wait. Just wait until the skill level of your draft league rises. It's coming, and there's too much of it to ignore. If only it was only relevant to some matchups. These are 7 Mons that are draftable that have Prankster Encore. There are a dozen fast ones, but 100 Mons with Encore. Like, the best ones are the fast ones, but anybody can ruin your day with Encore. And so why would I click Will-O-Wisp when I could be locked into it? Why would I even bring Will-O-Wisp in the team builder when I see an Encore Mon on my opponent's side of the field? It adds a lot of risk, and it's not about RNG, right? So let's look at RNG. Most of the things that frustrate players about this game are randomness elements. I think we've all grown to accept, though, that Pokemon has random elements, that you could be randomly go to sleep, paralyzed, ally switched, critical hit, low accuracy moves, all of this stuff. We all have to come to terms with it. I've complained at different times about these things, but never to the extent of Encore, and you'll never get more than a snide comment from me going forward on this stuff. But Encore is a very specific, different bucket of move in which it doesn't add randomness. You can safely click Encore, wait for the move that is they dare to dream, to click Light Screen or Will-O-Wisp or whatever, and then you punish them every time. Like, I guess they can switch, but that's still a losing proposition to switch because it doesn't accomplish a lot to preemptively switch. So Encore is a specific kind of move. I'm not going to be talking about banning Moody, banning Sleep, banning Ally Switch, and I don't think anyone else should be either, but Encore is a very specific beast whose effect on this game is not omnipresent. You shouldn't see it all the time, but it causes people to preemptively not try things, and I think that's a worse game. Its impact is limited, but almost entirely negative. This is the final pitch here, is that Draft League is inherently a custom format. Most of the time, the resistance I'm getting to banning Encore is, it's bad, but it's not that bad, or let's just keep the format as it is, but this is not VGC that we play. We play Draft League, where only one team gets each Mon, where we had restricteds in VGC, but we removed them from Dynamax. We put attacks on Dozogiri, the combo, and it works just fine. We've made a price hike so that when you have Chi-Yu, you essentially have to have low tiers to make up for it price-wise. Every Draft League is different, and that's great. We try stuff. We both hard ban or soft ban things by making them more and more expensive. Singles has tons of bans. I'm not saying we should become singles, but it's multiple times more popular than VGC. So this is not the end of the world to ban something. You add 3 words to your rule sheet. Encore is banned. You might have to remind people once or twice in the beginning, but this is really not that hard. VBLS's rule sheet fits on 1 page. It's really, really not that hard to implement. It's bad, but it's not that bad, is what I hear. That's a fundamentally different question from, is it good? It's not good. It's a thin layer of slime on the pizza that is Draft League. On one sense, it's still pizza, but on the other sense, let's get the slime off of it. When most people have a mildly to moderately negative experience with Encore, let's just try it. It's low cost to try removing it. I do not think anything will be negatively impacted by trying a season without it. Protect is going to be strong. Well, we have so many ways to punish Protect, right? if you protect while I sword stance, I'm winning there. If you protect while I substitute, or protect while I set up a screen, there's so many interesting back and forth, like rock, paper, scissors situations in this game that are so good that happen by accident. This is a game where the creators did not intend for us to make a competitive draft league format out of it. So we have to make the format work for us. We should try and see. We have Taunt. It's a healthy alternative. It's fine. We'll be fine without Encore. Please, I'm like on the fence about joining next season in the VBLS because it wastes my time in Team Builder trying to come up with ways to not be punished by Encore. And it's a me problem. It obviously bothers me more than other folks, but it seems like a very low-cost solution. Let's move on. Experiment. This is what I'm talking about here. If you just, for the sake of power creep, you could just remove mons over 20. It's like 20 or 25 mons, and the whole format feels pretty different again. You can have Chanpao back in a season or two. What about somewhat lower tier? When you go 15 and below. What about low tier? This is a really fun. A lot of people do like it, including my friend Jace. We are trying different stuff. Different mons available, and also we should try making the format as good as it can be for the future of Draft League. So, okay, I'm done. Conclusions. We've had so much fun today, haven't we? I think this game is potentially really interesting in 2024. You want to prioritize some unique tools and threats, stuff that is not made obsolete by slightly better stuff that's come in later generations. Independent playmakers, regardless of the conditions. Araquanid's doing solid damage with water. Even in sun, it's doing okay. Pick a direction, push really hard in it. That is my recommendation to people drafting. You do not need to cover everything. Have a package of 5 or so different threats that are collectively really hard to deal with, and then just mix up which one's coming and which one's carrying a scarf. Mostly offensive pieces. It's hard to handle offense in this game, particularly with all the buffs to move pools and offense in general in Gen 9. You only need a few dedicated supports, because your offensive pieces can click taunt or light screen sometimes too. So that is, I think, the winning recipe is offensive pieces, pushing overly hard into specific directions, exploiting holes into different teams, and opening up play.pokemon.showdown.com/teambuilder and looking around. This is a game that just rewards your creativity, thinking what might work, putting it in the calculator and seeing if it works, and sometimes trying it anyway. This is a really great game. That I will leave it on. This is a really great game. Peace.